Welcome to our rolling news coverage. We will bring you the latest developments on the most pressing stories around the world. Straight ahead.
Event number 1. Russia struggles to produce UAVs. Ukraine stubbornly protects its sovereignty, cutting off supply. Event number 2. The conflict escalated when Iran attacked the Gulf, drawing a response from the U.S. and Israel. Event number 3. Iran's new supreme leader threatened to close the Strait of Hormuz after his father was killed.
And now, for the details.
Russian war propagandist Vladimir Solovyov has criticized the Kremlin for cutting the country's drone production due to budget shortages. How are we going to continue this war? Solovyov questioned on his show this week, recounting how a drone manufacturer revealed that production would be cut several-fold. Solovyov lamented, "Representatives from the largest corporations are saying, we were supposed to get this much in advance payments, but now we have only a fraction of that. How are we supposed to manufacture anything?" He stressed that there is a huge demand for drone production, while the budget is empty. "The front lines are screaming for more, but there's no money," he said. The propagandist also outrageously suggested that the Russian military should attack NATO countries like France and the UK, as well as Scandinavian nations that are supporting Ukraine. He complained about why the Russian military has not yet attacked any factories in NATO countries involved in producing equipment for the Ukrainian army. Russia is facing growing challenges in maintaining a stable supply of weapons and drones as its full-scale invasion of Ukraine enters its 4th year. The high intensity of the fighting and massive equipment losses on the battlefield have forced Moscow to increase production, mobilize old stockpiles, and seek components from abroad to sustain its military operations. Analysts note that the rate at which Russian forces consume equipment, particularly artillery shells, armored vehicles, and drone systems, often exceeds the country's defense industry's capacity to replace or repair them. Drones have become a key element of Russia's strategy, with its military deploying large numbers of cheap attack drones to overwhelm air defense systems and target infrastructure. Although production lines have been expanded and output has increased significantly, Russian officials have had to admit that production levels still do not meet the urgent needs at the front lines. Procurement has also been complicated by export restrictions on drones and related technologies from foreign suppliers. Russia's defense industry is under additional heavy pressure from Ukrainian strikes targeting facilities related to weapons and drone production. These attacks have targeted factories, warehouses, and logistics centers, with the aim of slowing down production and disrupting supply lines of military equipment to Russian forces in combat. Iran launched multiple attacks early Friday morning against Gulf Arab nations, including dozens of drones directed toward Saudi Arabia, following warnings from its new supreme leader about hosting U.S. bases, while U.S. President Donald Trump has threatened a strong retaliation. "Watch what happens to these lunatics today," Trump wrote in a social media post. "Iran's navy is decimated, their air force is gone, their missiles, drones, and everything else are being destroyed, and their leaders are being wiped off the face of the earth." According to the Associated Press, these comments came a day after Iran's supreme leader, Ayatollah Mojtaba Khamenei, vowed not to hesitate to avenge the blood of slain Iranians and warned Gulf Arab nations to close U.S. bases, saying the concept of American protection is nothing but a lie. Intense airstrikes hit the area around Iran's capital, Tehran, early Friday morning, just before marches for the annual pro-Palestinian Quds Day event began. Despite the attacks, thousands took to the streets chanting "Death to Israel" and "Death to America." With growing global concerns about a potential energy crisis and no end to the war in sight, the international benchmark Brent crude oil price remained above $100 a barrel, as Iran continued to tighten its grip on shipping through the Strait of Hormuz, a strategic waterway where a fifth of the world's oil passes from the Persian Gulf to the open sea. The price of Brent crude had soared to around $120 a barrel and is now about 40% higher than when Israel and the United States attacked Iran on February 28th to start the war. Iran has attacked ships trying to pass through the strait, and Khamenei's comments, his first in public since being appointed to replace his father, who was killed on the first day of the conflict, indicated that Iran will continue to blockade the waterway. In Iraq, rescue efforts are underway after a U.S. KC-135 tanker aircraft crashed, according to U.S. Central Command, CENTCOM. Iran's supreme leader, Ayatollah Mojtaba Khamenei, declared that the leverage of closing the Strait of Hormuz must be used, and that Iran's attacks on its Gulf Arab neighbors will continue. His first statement since taking office was read by an announcer on state television on Thursday. According to the Associated Press, Iranian state television offered no explanation as to why Khamenei, 56, did not appear on camera. Israeli intelligence assessments suggest he was wounded in the war, likely in the February 28 Israeli airstrike that killed his father, the late 86-year-old Supreme Leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei. The international benchmark Brent crude oil price has soared back above $100 as Iranian attacks hit transport ships, and the U.S.-Israeli war with Iran shows no signs of cooling down. Meanwhile, U.S. President Donald Trump has promised to finish the mission, even as he asserts that Iran has been essentially destroyed. Major developments on Thursday included Iranian attacks on commercial ships around the Strait of Hormuz and the Iraqi port of Basra, escalating its defense strategy by pressuring the U.S. by strangling the wealthy Gulf region to threaten global economic stability. The first week of the war has cost the United States $3 billion, according to the Pentagon. The Israeli military is also carrying out airstrikes in Iran and attacking Iran's military ally Hezbollah in Lebanon, where more than 800,000 people have been displaced by the fighting. The United Nations Refugee Agency said that up to 2 million people in Iran have been displaced by the ongoing war. Khamenei said that he, like the Iranian public, only found out he had been chosen as the supreme leader through Iranian state television. He did not mention his location in the statement, as he is likely in a secure, undisclosed location to avoid a threatened Israeli assassination campaign. Minutes after the speech ended, the roar of airstrikes once again echoed across Iran's capital. In his speech, Khamenei acknowledged his father's death, signaling that he was at the scene afterward and saw his father's body. Khamenei also confirmed that his wife, one of his sisters, his niece, and the husband of another sister were also killed in the airstrike. "I had the honor of seeing his body after his martyrdom," Khamenei said of his father. "What I saw was a mountain of resolve, and I was told that the fist of his intact hand was clenched tight." Quote, The Israeli military's Arabic language spokesman, Avichai Adrei, said on X that Lebanese residents should move north of the Zaharani River, which is about 56 kilometers from its midpoint to the border with Israel. More than 800,000 people in Lebanon have been displaced in the last 10 days during the latest conflict between Israel and Hezbollah, part of the wider Iran war. Ayatollah Mojtaba Khamenei's remarks suggest that Iran may open new fronts in the war if it continues to drag on. That could potentially signal a return by Iran to the types of military attacks the U.S. has accused it of in the past, including the 1983 bombing of the U.S. Marine barracks in Beirut and other incidents. One point I must emphasize is that under any circumstances, we will demand compensation from the enemy. Quote, If they refuse, we will seize their assets to the extent we deem appropriate, and if that is not possible, we will destroy their assets to an equivalent degree. Quote, When Ali Khamenei took over from the late Grand Ayatollah Ruhollah Khomeini, he did not immediately give a live public speech, instead waiting until after a 40-day mourning period. However, Mojtaba Khamenei finds himself and the Iranian government he leads in what is perhaps the most desperate war since the 1979 Islamic Revolution.